The news day continues here in One News Now. I'm Diego Castro, bringing you the biggest headlines from around the world. The U.S. Treasury confirms that Washington may default on its federal debts for the first time in history by as early as June. The agency has repeatedly warned that the Treasury would likely run out of cash to pay government bills as early as June 1. In a letter to Congress, the Treasury said that the agency will be unlikely to meet all U.S. government payment obligations by then without congressional action to raise a $31.4 trillion debt ceiling. This leaves 10 days for congressional Republicans and White House negotiators to reach a deal. The Treasury has also repeatedly warned that failure to raise the federal borrowing limit would unleash, quote, an economic and financial catastrophe for the U.S. and global economies. In line with that, U.S. President Joe Biden and Republican Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy are set to meet to negotiate raising the debt ceiling. But what exactly is in store for the U.S. in case the two fail to come to an agreement and the Washington Senate ends up defaulting on its debts? The Associated Press explains.
Well, it's a pivotal moment in the debt ceiling negotiations. Lawmakers in the Biden administration are racing to complete these negotiations before June 1st. That's the time Janet Yellen had said she would have could possibly run out of maneuvering room in paying the nation's bills, and that at that point, because the country can no longer borrow money to continue financing its operations, the country would then default. It would be unprecedented, and economists say that it would likely move the country into a recession. Under a default, the government would continue running, but it would only be able to pay the amount of money that it has coming into the Treasury. It would be very difficult to prioritize who would be getting that money. That would be up to the administration, up to the Treasury Department, but Social Security benefits, veterans payments, bond payments would all be subject possibly to not occurring. It's different from a shutdown in that when you have a shutdown, Congress has not approved spending for that particular fiscal year. Those normally have been, and they've been partial shutdowns. Our military people continue to work, and people in critical positions continue to work, but many employees are not allowed to come into the office. Default is certainly worse than a partial government shutdown. While a shutdown does impact economic activity, not nearly to the extent that a default would. You know, if a default were to occur, interest rates would immediately spike, and the U.S. would be viewed internationally as a less safe place to invest. Bond interest rates to pay our debts into the future would most certainly skyrocket, and there's little doubt that the economy would suffer.
The governor of Russia's Belgorod region says Ukrainian saboteurs had entered the territory. In a drone footage, smoke could be seen rising above fields and buildings in the small town of Gosinka near the border with Ukraine. Kremlin said President Vladimir Putin had been informed and that work was underway to drive out the supposed saboteurs.
Текущая обстановка: 8 человек у нас ранено. По информации от Министерства здравоохранения, Министерства обороны, погибших среди мирных жителей нет. Еще раз повторю, ситуация достаточно напряженная, как была, так и остается. Введен режим контртеррористической операции. Введены достаточно большое количество ограничений.
But a senior aide to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Kyiv had nothing to do with the incursion. Ukraine's military intelligence spokesperson was quoted by media as saying that opposition-minded Russian groups were responsible. One of these is the group calling itself the Liberty of Russia Legion, which is a Ukraine-based Russian militia that says it is working inside Russia for Putin's overthrow.
Мы такие же люди, как и вы. Мы хотим, чтобы наши дети росли в мире и были свободными людьми, чтобы они могли путешествовать, учиться и просто были счастливы в свободной стране. Но этому нет места в современной путинской России, прогнившей насквозь от коррупции, вранья, цензуры, ограничений свобод и репрессий. В той России, где жизнь человека значит меньше.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now World. I'm Diego Castro. Turkey's third-place election candidate endorsed President Tayyip Erdogan, boasting the incumbent and intensifying challenges for opposition candidate Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu in the runoff vote set on Sunday. Sinan Oğan, a hardline nationalist who was little known among the broader public before the campaign, won 5.2% support in the initial presidential election. This prompted some analysts to call him a potential kingmaker for the runoff. Oğan explained that Kılıçdaroğlu's Nation Alliance failed to convince them about the future, while the decision to back Erdogan was based on a principle of, quote, non-stop struggle against terrorism. Erdogan received 49.5% support on May 14 compared to Kılıçdaroğlu's 44.9%. But the ruling party's coalition won a majority in parliament, giving Erdogan an advantage as he seeks to extend his two-decade rule. At least 12 people died while many others were injured in a stampede at the soccer stadium in El Salvador. Two popular teams were on their playoff quarterfinal game at the Cuscatlan Stadium, where the stampede broke out on Saturday. The venue, which can hold more than 44,000 spectators, is one of the largest stadiums in Central America. The Salvadoran Football Federation has expressed solidarity with the relatives of those deceased and affected by the incident. El Salvador President Nayib Bukele said authorities will conduct a thorough investigation. A Reuters source says Paris 2024 organizers have been working on installing the Olympic flame on the Eiffel Tower. Reuters says it is not clear whether the flame would stay on the iconic monument throughout the July 26 to August 11 sports extravaganza. The source noted that organizers have been working on installing the Olympic fire on Eiffel over the past 2 years. However, the source added that the flame would not be put at the top of the Eiffel Tower for technical reasons. They explained that the flame cannot be at the top of the tower because the antennas are already installed there. Paris 2024 organizers have yet to comment on the matter, but as early as now, tourists have already expressed mixed reactions over the report.
I think it's super cool, you know, as an American, and we don't have anything like this, and it already looks like a torch, so.
I think the Eiffel Tower would be the one place. I think it's the most iconic location within Paris that the world would know about, and so I don't think it should be anywhere else but on the Eiffel Tower.
Maybe it should be near the stadium. But then it still look good on the Eiffel Tower though, for the world, but yeah.
It's more of a tourist thing if it's on the tower. If it's in the stadium, it's more sports.
And those are the top world headlines of the hour. Join us again at 9 a.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. Coming right up is Agenda at 8 a.m. I'm Diego Castro. We are One News. All sides, all the time.